Never in my life did I think BLS would be at 3. Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today we got some news that the July 1st, 2017 ban list for the OCG was announced. Now, I know I typically focus here on the TCG on this channel, but I do like to look at the OCG and review their list because there are some implications and some assumptions that we can kind of make for when we do get our next ban list, especially coming up here into link format in July, that we can kind of speculate and see how our format's going to transition and possibly follow in the footsteps of the OCG, because there is kind of a trend in terms of the way Konami bans cards here in America compared to Japan. I know our lists are two completely different beasts, but at the same time there are some consistencies. So I'm going to start off by going over the cards and their impact on the OCG meta to the best of my ability. Then we're going to talk about how this can affect, going into the TCG format when we get our next ban list, which presumably is going to be in a month or so. And then after that, we're pretty much just going to take it from there. So, looking at this list, the first card and the most important card, the one that got banned, is Zoodiac Broad Bull. So, Broad Bull, I mean, when you're at the OCG, when the OCG has Trident banned, Barrage banned, Rapier at 1, and Zoodiac is still topping, that's actually a really big deal. And the core reason for that is Broad Bull, whether it's in a pure Zoodiac variant or it's a True Draco Zoodiac variant, Broad Bull is essentially the reason that the deck has still been able to perform as well as it has, mainly because Broad Bull is just cheap and easy advantage, because the second you overlay it on any Zoodiac, you're searching your deck for another one, so you're gaining just free +1s every turn for nothing. And the fact that it's been at 3 this whole time, I mean, every Zoodiac player who's playing, any Zoodiac variant at all has just been maxing out on the card, and a lot of people have honed in and focused on the fact that this card is definitely the problem. I mean, here in the TCG, we think Trident and Barrage are the problem, but yet we haven't even gotten to that point where the OCG is, and they have Broad Bull still at 3, and now it's banned. So I think that was really good, and I think this is finally going to be the nail in the coffin for Zoodiac, mainly because now they have, I mean, the best card that they have that's left is like Chakanine, that I guess you could technically abuse with Ram, but other than that, there's not really a whole lot of advantage generating cards left in that archetype that are now not on the ban list. So, moving on to the limited cards, there's 3 of them. We've got Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, Dragonic Diagram, and Fairy Tale Snow. So I'm going to talk about Diagram and Masterpiece together because they essentially go together. Diagram, basically, it was in every deck that wasn't a pure Zoodiac deck. I mean, it was in True Draco Zoodiac, it's in the True King Dinosaur deck. Like, this card has just been running rampant, and just the fact that the amount of advantage that this card generates is absurd. This is something that I think a lot of us saw coming, essentially since this card's inception into the Japanese meta. And then you've also got Masterpiece, which is just a completely absurd and unfair card in the right circumstances. I mean, the fact that it's just so oppressive, and the fact that you can't really out it unless you have something like a Kaiju or a very specific out. I mean, the fact that this card was still at 3, I didn't think really it was going to stay at 3 for long, and now it's at 1. So, could you still technically play something like True Draco Turbo? Maybe. I mean, Masterpiece and Diagram are still at 1, but definitely putting them at 1 hurts True Draco variants or just, anything that requires Diagram as a whole. And if you looked at the meta there, pretty much their entire meta is just like ours, where True Draco Zoodiac, pure Zoodiac, and just completely dominating still, but now that's definitely going to change. Now, the last card that's limited is Fairy Tale Snow. And this is a big one. So, one big difference between the OCG and the TCG, the OCG has 3 That Grass Looks Greener still. So that means Fairy Tale Snow is a really big problem. And that means Infernoids are still a deck that can, function, or any deck really that you want to play in a 60-card variant can still function well, which means Fairy Tale Snow is going to be very effective. Now, if you've watched the OCG, there are a lot of 60-card decks running around because True Draco Zoodiac and Pure Zoodiac and True King Dinosaurs, to an extent of wealth, pretty much solidified themselves in the meta, but any 60-card deck that can play Fairy Tale Snow is just going to abuse it, and a lot of us know how insanely powerful of a card Fairy Tale Snow is. So I personally am okay with that hit because it's totally fine. I would like to see that reciprocated here as well in the TCG. Even though, you know, we only have one grass, it might not be as big of a deal, but the fact you can use its effect multiple times in a turn is just absurd, and everything else about the card is amazing. So we're going to speed up a bit now. Those are the only cards I really wanted to talk about really in depth, because moving into the semi-limits and the unlimits, a lot of the cards here are actually rather irrelevant, and I'm going to explain why. So for the semi-limits, they have Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer, which we now have we've had it 3 for a long time. Rescue Cat, remember Rescue Cat has the errata, so no one's been playing it. Witch of the Black Forest, for those of you guys who don't know, it's just like Sangan. It got an errata, basically that's the same thing, so it's pretty much worthless. Skarm is now at 2. I believe Skarm was limited, if my memory serves correct, so with Link format and the fact that, you know, you can't spam multiple Dantes, I guess they're trying to somewhat reintroduce Burning Abyss, I guess. Sacrifice, Wavering Eyes, Burial from a Different Dimension, Dark Hole, Card of Demise, Pre-Preparation of Rites, Terraforming Union Hanger, Dragon's Ravine, and Solemn Strike. So that's a lot of cards. The only ones I want to talk about in depth that I find very interesting here are Sacrifice, Card of Demise, and Terraforming and Solemn Strike. So Sacrifice is a little bit crazy because the OCG, if I'm correct, I think still has 3 copies of Scout and 3 copies of Skill Drain, and I'm pretty sure every other Klee card, maybe apart from Towers, I'm not 100% sure though, is still at 3. So there is a chance that Klee Turbo Demise is actually a deck that could perform in this meta now that something like Sacrifice is back at 2. So I find that a little bit interesting. Card of Demise, that's a card that I think a lot of people would like to see hit, but at the same time, I don't really know, because I like Card of Demise and what it does for slower decks that, you know, kind of don't really use the special summoning mechanic and play a bit of a slower grind game, and that they can generate resources off a card like that. Sure, it's completely unfair because you can get a +2, but I don't know. I think it kind of puts it in check because now you're not going to see Demise as much, but I mean, it's here or there. I don't know. Terraforming is a really big one. There's been a lot of contention lately around whether or not Terraforming should be hit, and Terraforming is really interesting because back in the day, we didn't have so many powerful field spells. You know, we didn't have Dragonic Diagram. We didn't have Union Hanger, which I'm going to briefly mention here. Magical Meltdown, Cosmo Town, even though it's for a deck that's relatively irrelevant for the most part, Cosmo Town is still an insanely powerful field spell. The game was never this field spell heavy in the past, and so I kind of like the check here on Terraforming because this is arguably a better Rhoda in a lot of different ways, because you look like Terraforming can get you to Magical Meltdown, can get you to Alistair, or like Terraforming can get you to Diagram, can get you to Lithosagems, or to Masterpiece even. So it's the fact that this card is at 3, I think is a little bit insane. I don't know necessarily if it should have gone to 2 or what they really should have done with it, but I think it's like an okay hit, but at the same time, you guys know how I feel about the semi-limited list. Like, if you're gonna hit a card, either put it to 1 or just leave it unlimited, because sometimes 2 of a card really isn't too impactful when it comes to a lot of different circumstances. And then lastly, Solemn Strike is interesting. So now it's funny because I guess like it's the new age Solemn Brigade now that Solemn Strike's down to 2. Solemn Strike is a really powerful card, and I don't really think it's completely unfair. I mean, if you're going first and you have 3 strikes, then you're just like a fucking god. But I don't know. I mean, that's like, it seems like a weird hit to me, especially because they're getting that structure deck that has Solemn Strike as a reprint. So I find that a little bit interesting. But for the unlimits, BLS, Armageddon Knight, Swirl Slime, Wisdom Eye, which we now have, Goyo Guardian, Ignister, Brio, and Brain Control. Again, BLS, I never thought in my life I would see at 3. I mean, I'm someone who's played this game since its game's inception, and I saw, like, when BLS first came out and got hit on the ban list. So now that this card's at 3, to me, just kind of shows where this game is at, that a card that powerful is now just you know, at 3, totally fine. Everything else is totally good, though. The Swirl Slime, DDD was actually really good in the OCG compared to us, so, I mean, putting that at 3 now that Link format's up is totally normal. Armageddon Knight was a check for Dark Synchro, which, again, because we're in Link format now, no one cares, and everything else is pretty much completely irrelevant, again, because of Link format. So, I want to take a brief moment here and discuss what does this mean for the TCG, because we're a couple lists behind, you know, and that just infuriates me because the OCG gets their list so consistently. They got one in April, they get one in July, they get them on time, first of the month, you know, every few months. We're in the TCG, they don't give a fuck, and they're just like, well, you know, we'll give you the list when we feel like it. You know, when the format seems to need a change, yeah, we'll give you a list, and that's why we had the Fusion Sub combo for, you know, 3 fucking months. But that aside, this is going to be really interesting because when we get our new ban list, presumably in July or August, just depending on the way the format shapes out, which, again, I'm hoping we do for Link format, there's still a bunch of cards that, like, need to get hit for Link format, like Gofu, for example, needs to get hit, but I'm really curious to see what they do with some of the meta cards we have right now. You know, we still have Trident at 3, we still have Barrage at 3, we still have Broad Bull at 3, and Diagram at 3, and Masterpiece at 3, so there's all these insanely powerful cards that I'm genuinely curious as to how they're going to hit them when it comes to our ban list, and I don't know if they're going to just take a big leap and when it comes to the TCG, and they're just going to say, you know what, let's just catch up to pace with the OCG, we're going to hit Broad Bull, and Trident, and Barrage, and Rapier, and Diagram, and Masterpiece, and just basically, like, say, here you go, you know, now you're caught up with the OCG, have fucking fun. If they did that, that would just be absolutely fucking crazy. I don't know if they're going to, but it's really interesting to see how their meta is shaping up in Link format, and as we're approaching that time, what changes are they going to make as we take the first steps into Link format, and how we're going to essentially react to that as, you know, the TCG as a whole. But guys, that's all for my thoughts and kind of overview of this ban list. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the OCG's ban list. Do you like it better than our ban list? I know I sure do, because they actually did something to affect the fucking game, but I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts as well as what you think is going to happen once we get into Link summoning format and how the next ban list is going to affect our format. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you enjoyed this video, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.